Hi, everyone. Welcome to another video that we are conducting for the Connect Together program online. So today we have Graeme Wyman with us. He is the audio engineer and also community coordinator at VAMS. So welcome.
Hey, thank you, Carina. So you have some questions for me today.
Yes, I do. In fact, since you have been involved with VAMS for 6 years now, I wonder, how did you come on board to be the program coordinator?
So when I came back from doing my master's, I was looking for work, and I think I got back in October, and about in February, just given that I'm a person with a disability, I found out about Neil Squire and how they can put you in touch with different job positions. And, I wanted to strictly kind of go into engineering, but, Neil Squire put me in touch with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. And basically, it was a different fit from what I was planning on doing. I mean, again, I thought I was going to be an engineer, but this program was also looking for people who could teach music lessons and also help out with live events. So I had about a 12-week kind of paid internship from Neil Squire at VAMS, and then it just, so happened it was the right fit, and then I was brought on part-time, and that lasted for about 3.5, 4 years, but my hours were getting increased every year or every 6 months, more and more. And then it was last year in January when David Fong and Ruby came on, Ruby Yang, the new director of operations and executive director, that I was hired full time because there was that need for the program.
Wow, that's that does come a long way, coming to be where you are right now. Yeah. When did you figure out that you're interested in pursuing music for your career?
That's a hard thing to pinpoint, especially I grew up and music was always everywhere. So I started playing piano when I was 6. Then when I was 10, I moved on to the alto saxophone. And throughout all this time, I always had wanted to play the guitar. Like, even when I started piano, I asked my parents, can I get a guitar? They were like, okay, try piano first. I was like, okay. Then in grade 4, when I was 10, the jazz band and concert bands were starting. But it was more of a focus on concert band. And I was like, well, can I start the guitar? And my parents, my teacher was like, we don't have guitar in concert band. So that's why I picked the sax. But finally, when I was 14, or I guess a little aside, when I was 13, my dad got me a right-handed guitar. And I got so frustrated with this thing because I'm actually a left-handed guitar player. And so, I'm sitting there trying to play it, and it just doesn't make any sense. And, music at that point had come fairly natural to me, having played since, for about, 8 years. And my dad was like, one day he was like, why, you never really pick up the guitar. It's the one thing you always wanted to do. And I was just like, it just doesn't feel right. And he was like, okay, how would you hold it? I was like, well, it's supposed to be held this way, but I want to hold it this way. And so, of course, he clued in. At that point, I didn't even know the difference between a right-handed or left-handed guitar. So once I got that, it was pretty obvious. It was the one instrument my parents never really had to tell me to go practice, or I was always playing this thing. And I guess it was 16 when I started doing very early cuts of my own recordings. And so that was probably when I knew, okay, I want to go into recording. I want to make music my career. Interesting enough, though, years later when we were going through old family videos, there's video of me playing like a Fisher-Price rake left-handed, and my dad was like, I should have clued in back then that you were left-handed. I think it was like good 6 months of me not realizing I was left-handed. So yeah, it was probably around 16 that was a long way of answering your question, but yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I remember the first time when I got my guitar, and it was just the coolest thing.
Yeah, no, it's funny once, especially when you find one instrument you want to play or you really want to. It doesn't, not the piano was work or playing the sax was work, but it's just I think it also had to do with the music that I grew up listening to. I always wanted to play guitar. Like, yeah.
That's a long way of your dad letting you to uh, come around to guitar as well. It's like, oh, piano, and also it's like traditional music training. It would be very different than um, playing a guitar and playing pop songs, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I do give my parents full marks for telling me to start on the piano, because the way that I see theory and how I learn music is actually on the piano. And I find that's the most accessible instrument to actually learn, because on the piano, it's the same 12 notes, right, for every scale or every octave, just, higher or lower on the piano. Whereas the guitar, as you have 6 different strings, 2 of them are tuned the same, but 5 of them are tuned to different pitches. So it's not as visually easy to kind of understand music that way, or at least that's what I found. Like, thank God I had that background in music to get like the piano to understand theory and things like that.
Yeah, that's neat. That's probably why most people start from a piano and then they go from there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I suggest that for sure.
I wonder what was one significant piece that moved you when you were, I don't know, early in age?
Early in age, well, again, like music was always around. I and knock on wood, I had the parents I had, but whether my mom was cooking in the kitchen, they'd have music on. So, I mean, I think it was just a combination of a lot of different influences, whether it was, my dad being very much into classic rock. So like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Zeppelin. Interesting enough, I think my dad had kind of had enough of the Beatles, so it wasn't till later. So not too much Beatles, but then my mom's 80s influence and my dad's to a certain degree. But I do remember being very young, and my aunt, who at the time was living with us, um, the Bare Naked Ladies Gordon record was always on. So I think that was their second record, and it came out in '92. And not that I must at some point, because that's to this day, that record, I just find it catchy as all get out. But that's an interesting question. It probably wasn't until I was 13 when I first heard Pink Floyd. I was kind of going into my own music, and my dad really wasn't a big Pink Floyd fan. I mean, I think he had one of their LPs, but we never played it. And I went to Laser Floyd with my cousin, and it was the first time that I heard The Wall, and especially with the visuals and everything over at the planetarium, I instantly fell in love with that band. And I mean, the rest is history. They're still, I listened to one of the records last night going to bed. I just don't, I could listen to them forever and ever. So that would probably be an event or figure. And then I finally got to see, for my 16th birthday, I got to see the guitar player David Gilmour and Rick Wright. And so that was kind of also around, interesting enough, the time I started recording. So seeing that show, like seeing 50% of the band for the first time, because they don't really go on tour, that was probably, it's in my top 3 favorite shows of all time.
That's awesome. I actually haven't heard a lot of those names that you mentioned, but um, in some ways, music connects people together. But still, there's kind of generational difference for music. Sometimes a lot of my friends would be just find it ridiculous that I haven't listened to some of the big names.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the one thing about going, especially to music college, that I learned. The one thing that I took away to heart more than anything else is how subjective music is. Like, no one can tell you what you like, and it's not, it's great if, people want to share their interests, but you can't force someone to like something that they don't, or, yeah, people like what they like. So
Yeah. And that's what makes us different and pursuing different things.
hmm And again,
Yeah.
and that's what I think, again, it goes back to, I think, just being very young and primarily listening. I mean, again, had a lot of classical influence from my grandparents as well. So I still like really appreciate classical music. But I think it really stemmed from my mom and dad having grown up, like being teenagers in the 70s and things like that. A lot of the music that they listened to was from the 70s and 80s. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and did you when did you figure out that Berklee would be the college that you wanna study in?
So it was an interesting story. I um, I had an application out to Capilano. I had an application out to UBC, and I had an application out to UVic, as well as Berklee. So I kind of covered all my bases around BC. And yeah, I don't know what, like, I can't, like, God, we're going back 12 years now, but I must have, I don't know, maybe it was something that I just felt or something. I think it also had to do with the process at the time, in the sense of like, it was really strict. You're either doing jazz or like concert music. There wasn't really any wiggle room to do contemporary music. And I mean, that was the one thing. Berklee had the largest program. I think at the time they had around like 25 different majors that you could participate in. That includes, say, like music therapy, performance, music business, music engineering and production, film scoring. I could go on, but yeah, I I actually took all my other applications out, so it was only kind of Berklee that I was going for, and yeah, just just I don't know if it was just meant to be or whatnot, but yeah, I got in. The thanks, help from my parents as well, just with the application and everything, and yeah, the rest is history. It
That's
worked out.
wild.
Yeah, I know, right? I really put all my eggs in one basket. Literally, yeah.
But hey, you got every all the chances in together, and that's where you landed.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I'm very lucky, and it was just a very, yeah, I mean, it just worked out. I can't, and again, that was probably the thing that changed my life, going to Berklee more than anything else at the time. It
Hmm.
great way to, you know, having gone maybe to summer camps for a couple weeks here and there as a kid, never like traveled 3,000 miles away to go live for the next 4 years, knowing no one, no family in the States, anything like that. So it was a pretty like, all right. And especially just right at 18, it was like I had that summer and I was gone. So yeah. Yeah. So I grew up on the North Shore. Um, yeah. And again, basically was here for 18 years. Then I went to the undergraduate program at Berklee. And the year that I actually finished, they'd opened up a master's. And I think it had to do at the time because, again, knock on wood, but I went down to the school when the Canadian dollar was on par. So it's not like where we're at now, where we're paying 25 cents on the dollar. Um, but I think that also hurt me at the time because they wouldn't, the cost for actually sponsoring a Canadian to stay in the States, no one, when you have, 60 different engineers coming out of Berklee at the same, once, or I guess that's probably multiplied to 180 or something like that throughout the year. You know, you got that many going across the country and things like that, and other programs as well. So there was no use for a Canadian when a person from the States could do it, and they didn't have to pay for sponsorship. So then I went and did my master's, and I lived in Spain for 14 months.
Okay, that explains why you can speak Spanish.
Uh, Very poorly, very poorly. Yeah.
And from my understanding, you also know French.
No, I to be honest, I can retain it, as in if someone's speaking it, I can understand, but I really am horrible at actually speaking it to someone. Reading it, I can understand as well to a certain degree, but no, I say, and this is very cheesy, but I say I'm fluent in 2 languages, English and music. And I'm not that fluent
That's
in English.
great.
Yeah.
So what was studying at Berklee like? Finally have gotten into the college that you wanted? What was the couple of years at it like?
Yeah, it was it was probably the best decision I ever made in my life to basically pick everything up and move across North America. But no, I met, you know, the main thing too, I got to redefine who I was as becoming a young adult at that point, and really, I'm sure like you found yourself when you don't really know anyone here, you got to kind of, you still have your core values, but you got to develop who you are and who you want to be in a different place. And, so I still have friends that I talk to every week from that college. Of course, since the whole pandemic too, I've gotten to reconnect with a bunch more. But no, and it was just such an experimental time for me as well as a musician. Like I got to learn so much. The one thing that Berklee's great about is it's not like such a directed study. You actually normally take 1 year to really focus on what you'd like, you focus on kind of everything. So whether that's theory, ear training, you have to be able to play an instrument, whether it's voice or anything else. So that's part of the audition process. But yeah, no, it gives you a well-rounded balance to really kind of focus on what you want to do. And I mean, I knew what I wanted to go there for, which was the engineering. And it's a pretty difficult program to get into, but it's actually like the most sought out of all the majors. But again, it worked out. And the other cool thing was probably like one of my best friends from Berklee, he's from Seattle. And when we reconnected, like in the first semester at Berklee, like again, we lived in the same building. I don't know, we were out, I think I was coming back from some place, and I saw Danny, and it was just priceless because I was like, you went and auditioned right before me in Seattle. And he was like, yeah, I did. So funny enough, we both got in, then we got to know each other, and he wanted to do engineering. And I actually had him on the podcast. We did the critical listening that came out on Tuesday. I don't know when this is going to air, but it came out earlier in the week. So yeah, it was just, again, serendipitous. And so him and I, we really got to work on each other's projects, and it gave us a really cool dynamic where, whether Danny was writing or I was writing music, and then Danny would record it, or our friends, it was just nice to kind of have that, work dynamic where we always knew it almost gave us like an extra amount of time in the studio. We know that we would trust the person that we're working with, so that was a really cool space. And then, yeah, just again, the people were amazing to meet. And again, like being an engineer, the greatest part was, being able to capture all these young people going through the same thing and testing out their creative side.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that probably kind of like seeing how people come with their creativity and make and record at the studio, would that be one of the reasons why you stayed at VAMS for the following 5 years?
Yeah, again, like I found a great fit with VAMS because it not only, and this, I wasn't expecting this, but again, in my own head, I'm sure just like everyone else coming out of, the music engineering and production course, it was, I'm going to be an engineer at a studio, or that's what I'd eventually like, but I'll be interning until I, do that and X, Y, Z. But the really cool thing about VAMS, and this goes back to the programs that we have, it's not just recording, it's music lessons, there's performance. It really let me kind of expand and utilize everything and again, tying into my music, like business degree and things like that, like kind of, organizing shows and things like that. So I get to use both my degrees. It pushes me, it challenges me in different ways. So it really, I really, that it's an invaluable, kind of thing for myself. So no, it's great.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And also, you organized the VAMS 30th anniversary concert. What
Yeah,
was that like?
that was that was so to give a background, the funding that had gone for the previous concerts had actually cut out, so we were going to do this kind of more internally, and it was the first one that Ruby and David had come on for. And Ruby was, really, she let me take the reins, which was really cool, but she was really a great support during that time, because it's a lot of things to do for a show like that. And we did have help from Rob Calder from Secret Study, and he was the one that would always kind of he would kind of handle all the management, like Rob, he handles Skookum, he handles all a bunch of various live events within the Lower Mainland in BC, and yeah, I'm sure outside of BC as well. But yeah, for having never set up like a show like this, and to give a background, these shows, it's not like you're having two people play. That one, I think we had the most amount of performers. We had something like 10 different performers. So that's like, every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes, you're switching over. So it's a lot of, and, you're not only, it's not like there's one person playing in a band. Sure, there were people jumping around here and there, but it was a lot of different moving parts. So you got 10 different artists. You kind of have to get a band together for them if they do not have one. Then there's like catering, things like that, which, and all the budgeting and things like that. Like it really, again, which was a really like great thing, having done it once, is just to see what actually goes into it. And so again, it pushed me to, use my business degree a lot more than the engineering side, that's for sure. And then the really cool thing, like again, and then I'm also playing in I think 3 different bands. I think I played in 3 different bands that night. So it was really, yeah, and on top of that, you're actually playing as well. So it was, I remember that morning too, because I couldn't go to bed before 5:30, because it was like the day of, and I think we'd been working on this for like 4 months leading up to it. And, of course it had its hiccups, but it really, I'd say, went off as best as it possibly could. And I was exhausted by the end of the evening, but it was such a big high as well, just in the sense of, leading up to it and finally having it all said and done. It was a really special event. And not to mention for VAMS itself, to celebrate what David Sam had done and what, everyone with the organization had done up into that moment. But no, it was a really, something I'm definitely very proud of what we were able to accomplish, having never, I don't know if Ruby and David had ever planned a show like this before. I know I certainly had not, and then obviously with the leadership and guidance from Rob. So no, it was a lot of fun.
That's great to hear that backstory there.
Oh.
So tell us about your relationship with Dave Symington. How did you guys come together?
So I think Dave must have been a part of the interview process. I'm trying to think again, how I'm trying to think of the day that he and I met. It was just like a kind of an instant, connection, in the sense a lot of the music that we enjoyed, kind of the progressive rock kind of stuff that I had really, Dave was seeing these guys, before I was even a thought in my parents' head. And, just the styles of music that we really enjoyed playing together as well. That's how we really connected. And it just kind of blossomed from there. But at this point too, I guess I should mention, like, most of the bands that I actually play in, I'm playing bass. So I kind of picked up that trait or skill at Berklee, because there's one person who would never show up to the recording studio. It was the bass player. So I naturally would just jump on bass for a lot of things. But then
Naturally,
again,
that's how you pick up new instruments.
Definitely. And luckily enough, like, it's definitely a different instrument. I would not call them the same, but there's certain things about the bass and the guitar that are similar. So instead of 6 strings, it's only 4, but it's the same 4 top strings. So at least I could tune it before I even knew what I was doing. But yeah, no, it was, again, I think drummers and bass players have a very, close connection. They should, if the bass and drums aren't really together, it's that's the foundation of where all pretty much the music that I play starts. And if I'm just lucky enough to be able to play with a guy like Dave. He's got a great sense of time. Like, out of any of the drummers, his sense of time is just impeccable. And so that gives us, again, over these last 6 years, how we've been able to play together, we've really, it's almost like we know what we're going to do or how we're going to come out of a fill or something like that. It's like, each other's tendencies on what they like to do. So that's always a really cool thing to kind of, hear in between him and I playing bass and drums together. And then, whether it's like, some philosophical stuff, we're pretty much the same on like the political spectrum. So it just kind of, it was for having a supervisor like that with Dave. I couldn't have asked for anything better back in the day. So it was fantastic.
That's cool. So Dave was the drummer and you were the bass, and Danny was the vocalist for the Dirt Brigade.
Yeah, and he's the guitar player. So I think Dave and Danny were playing. It was kind of interesting because I really didn't play in a band for, I think, that first year with people. I was kind of doing my own stuff, and I really wasn't, like, I'd go help out with shows, but I really wasn't a part of a group per se at that time. So I think they were playing with another client at the time. And then Danny, I know, kind of wanted to go off and do his own kind of thing because that was more driven by the other client. And I guess I don't even know how it just came. I think Dave and I must have jammed a couple times just playing, and they found out I played bass and was like, hey, do you want to join? And so I think that was probably about 5 years ago. So we've been playing music. It's good. Gosh, Danny, Dave, and I, it'll be nice when this pandemic's lifted to kind of get back to it. But it's just kind of a nice little trio. And I think that goes back to, I might have been, maybe part of it was I was playing with Jeff Stanfield a little bit here and there on the bass, who's another client. And maybe that's how Dave said, oh, Graeme should come in and play bass, because I know Danny knows a bunch of other musicians. But it's a nice little trio. We've done countless gigs together, which is nice. And again, it's also one of those things where Dave and I can tell Danny's tendencies, and he's plays in that kind of bluesy kind of fashion, but also really lets Dave and I experiment, which is nice when you have someone that allows you to kind of utilize your own musical, where, I think we should go this. He's very open to suggestions.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Graeme, for your time here again. And I think our last question is, what are the upcoming programs that we have at VAMS?
So since the pandemic happened, I'll probably remember that day for the rest of my life. Interestingly enough, just mainly because we were supposed to have a choir that day, and I was over in Victoria. I wasn't in Vancouver. And so I was scrambling very quickly to make sure everyone didn't go to choir. And it was like an hour before the choir was supposed to start. But so right now, unfortunately, and understandably so, GF Strong is shut down. So the studio is not actually open. Now, we have been Vancouver Coastal and the management at GF Strong has let us know that hopefully, fingers crossed, that in September, we will be back in GF. But up until then, or right now, what we're doing, the first pivot is obviously the podcast. Now, I know this format's going to be coming out in video as well, but we're doing the podcast called Reimagine Radio, and that can be found on our SoundCloud page, again, just under Reimagine Radio. So we kind of have been talking about different topics, specifically so far on music. So whether it's critical listening, we interviewed Sam and Dave, done a few other interviews with our artists. But the next thing that we're kind of doing is we also are doing a collaboration song. So we've actually put out one called Isolated, which I believe came out in the second week of May, if I'm remembering correctly, or first week. Anyway, long story short, again, it's on the Reimagine Radio. And basically, we just had a bunch of different of our clients come together to kind of participate in different, various levels. We normally have a Zoom session, just like, the one we're having now. And, people kind of give their input. And obviously, the first song was focused on, the feeling of isolation during the very beginning of the COVID-19. So we actually, just about a week ago, we started our second collaboration song, which we're still in this project's in its infancy, and we've hammered it down to what we want to do with the lyrics, but there's no real music right now. And if you are interested in participating, you can contact me at gwYman@VAMS.org if you would like to participate. Again, that's gwyman@VAMS.org. Or you can find my email on the website. So we're in the second collaboration song. And again, depending how long this goes, we're even talking about having a collaboration album by the end of the year, or an LP, depending on, what we like to do. It's normally about a month and a half to get a song done in this format. Now, besides that, we're also doing content on the VAMS mini school. So this is a program that we at VAMS have been developing for, we had it developed, or the idea of it, since the 30th anniversary. But just given that we haven't been able to finish the construction on the studio yet, we haven't really been able to implement it. However, during this time, we thought that it would be a great idea to kind of give introductions into some of the courses. So we've already, I've done one introduction about the importance of practice. I've done 2 other videos about dissecting hit songs, which can all be found on our YouTube page. And I believe that we're also just moving into the other courses. And again, just giving a taste on what we actually want to bring forward to people. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with VAMS.
Great. Thanks so much for being with us today, Graeme. I appreciate this opportunity to actually interview you instead of, I know you have been interviewing a lot of the artists before, and this is just an interesting reverse context for both of us. So,
sure. Yeah.
But thank you. It was great to get to hear your stories more in depth, and we will be pushing out more content. Coming up next would be other program coordinators at the Disability Foundation, and please stay tuned. And thanks for listening in.
Yeah, thanks. Take care.